physicist, but then I changed course into more computer science. So, I'm sorry, the formatting has, I made this on a Linux computer and now it's on a Windows computer, so it looks better. I'm going to talk about, first, give a brief introduction to what Bitcoin is, and then I'm going to compare some qualities with Bitcoin and the euro, and then I'm going to talk about why currency is valuable and how we can think about currencies. So the way that I like to present Bitcoin is by talking about how banks were before we had computers. Before we had computers, we had these, in banks we had these kind of books. In English they're called ledgers. And each customer in the bank had a line like this. And then you could record all the transactions that went in and out from the bank account. So why is this smart? What can we use this kind of ledger for? If I give an example, let's say Antti Ahonen and I are customers in the same bank, and I owe Antti 20 euros for dinner at a restaurant, and we both have an account with money in it. We have 100 euros each on our account in this book. Then I can go down to the bank and I can tell them to transfer 20 euros from my account to Antti's account. So just by updating the numbers in a book, you actually have a currency system. You don't need like things to give around. You don't need physical things. You just need a book, some names in it, and some numbers in it. Then you can actually, in theory, have a currency system. Now, of course, there are a lot of more technical details to Bitcoin. How do you prevent fraud? How do you prevent people from spending the same amount more than one time? And usually when I give this presentation, I talk a lot about the technical side of it, but I think I'll spend a bit more time talking about the economics of this. So if you have any questions about the technical, you can come and talk to me later. I'm very happy to talk about it. But yeah, the point is simply that a currency system and a payment system does not have to be very advanced. You just have a book and you update the numbers. That's it. And then, of course, you have to prevent fraud. That's the more technical side. But maybe some of you are thinking, this doesn't make sense. Why can't I just make a book then, and everybody will use my currency? Then I'll just be able to print a lot of money for myself. Okay, you're right. There are a bit more details to it. But if we to get into that, we have to talk a little bit about some economic theory. So you can ask yourself, what kind of qualities should a currency have? What's necessary to build a good currency? So economists have looked at this question, and they have come up with 6 or 7 different qualities that a currency should have in order for it to be a good currency, in order for it to be reasonable to expect people to use it. And they are listed here. The currency should be durable, so it's a bad idea to use bananas as currency because they will only last for a couple of weeks. You want something that can last a bit longer. And numbers in a book or numbers in a computer, they can last forever. You want a currency to be divisible. That means that if you sell your car or your house and you get a big pile of money, you still want to be able to spend a small amount of this money to buy an apple or a bread or buy groceries. So you need to, if you get a big gold coin or a big gold bar when you sell your house, then it's hard to spend this gold bar to buy apples. You need to, smelt it or something like that. And obviously, numbers in the book can be divisible as much as you want. You can divide it as much as you want. Then it needs to be fungible. That's a funny word. I hadn't heard that word before I started learning about this. But fungible means that if I borrow a car from Antti for a couple of weeks and I return another car to him, I say, here's your car back, then he might not be so happy. But if I borrow 100 euros from Antti and I return 250 euros, that's not a problem. That's fine. So that means that they can be one unit of this money is the same as the other unit of the money. It means that they have the same value. Then you need, for it to be used as currency, you need a limited supply. You need preferably also a predictable supply, because that's why we can't use, for instance, leaves as money or water as money, because there's plenty of water. So it's smarter to use something that there isn't too much of, otherwise it cannot have a high value. It needs to be portable. It's a good idea to be able to transport it around. And it needs to be widely accepted, and this is where Bitcoin might have some problems. And some economists say that big currency should also have an internal value, but the last point here is a bit disputed. So, how do these qualities compare Bitcoin and the euro? So, this here are some numbers from the European Central Bank, and it shows the supply. It shows the growth in the supply of the money of the euro. And what I think you should note here is that it goes pretty erratic up and down. This is a 13-year period, and it's fairly unpredictable. So the money supply of the euro is fairly unpredictable. Of course, there are a lot of countries in the world, like Zimbabwe or Venezuela, that are much worse. But if you take these numbers and compare it to Bitcoin, then we have the blue line here, and as you can see, what you should note about this is that first of all, this one is lower. If you look at the numbers for 2015, it's only 4%, meaning that the money supply of Bitcoin grows somewhat slower than for euro, at least for some periods. But what is more important, I think, is that you can predict the money supply of Bitcoin into the future. Here we can only talk about historical values because no one knows what it will be in a year or 2 years or 3 years. But the Bitcoin value or the growth of the Bitcoin money supply can be predicted. We have something called the Eurozone. Here, I think it's, how many countries? 18? 19 countries, yeah. And there's a map of this here, the Eurozone, and it's one of the reasons that the euro was invented, or why they made the euro, was that it could facilitate trade between different countries. And so this is the Eurozone, but this is the potential Bitcoin zone. There are 19 countries in the Eurozone, and there's 196 potential countries in the Bitcoin zone. Obviously today Bitcoin is a much smaller currency than the euro, but I think it has the maybe it has the potential to become a larger currency because it's a global currency and not a European currency. If you have any questions during this presentation, you can ask them while talking. I think that's more pleasant and easier. So if we sum up all of these things and say, okay, we have all these things that we would like money to do for us, we have all these qualities that we would like money to have. How does Bitcoin and the euro compare? What are the drawbacks of Bitcoin? What are the drawbacks of the euro? And I have made this table here. So I mentioned these 7 points. Durability, well, Bitcoin and euros, it's the same. They don't rush. No. Divisibility, well, the euro, it can only be divided down to 0.01 euro. And Bitcoin can actually be divided further down. So maybe Bitcoin has an advantage there. Fungibility, this is if I get 1 Bitcoin or I get 1 euro, can I say something about the history of this? Is it tainted somehow? Can I say that 1 euro is better than the other euro? No, I cannot. So they're both currencies are fungible. I mentioned this one previously. I think that Bitcoin has an advantage to the euro when it comes to the predictability of the supply and the limited supply. Because the supply in the amount of Bitcoins is limited by a computer program, so you can tell how many Bitcoins will exist in the future. You cannot do that with the euro because it's a matter of policy. There are bureaucrats in the European Union who decide how much the supply of euro should increase from year to year. There's also this thing about portability. How easy is it to transfer Bitcoins or euros over borders? Now, obviously, if we need to pay for, not only over borders, but how easy is it to transport it? How easy is it to give it from one person to the other? Obviously, if you're paying for something up here in the hotel, it's very easy, right, to send them euros. So just take out the card and swipe it, or you take out some cash and you give it to them. So that's very easy. But I don't know if anyone of you have tried to send money to other countries. Has anyone tried sending money to other countries? Yeah. Has anyone tried sending money out of the SEPA area, out of the European Union? Yes. Yeah, there are a couple of people down there. So if you want to send money within Europe, I think it takes about 1 day today, and it costs 1, 2, 3 euros to make a bank transfer within the European area. At least it did when I used these services. And you said that you had tried to send money.
Yeah, I tried to send money to Canada.
Yeah.
But it was like intensely complicated and
So
expensive.
It was expensive and it took a long time.
Yeah.
And it was complicated,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Have you ever tried sending an email to Canada?
Yeah.
Was that expensive, complicated, and did it take a long time? No. Bitcoin monetary transfers are as easy and as fast and as cheap as sending an email. So this is kind of the main selling point that Bitcoin has. You take away the control of the banks, and you take away the power. The power of the banks and their source of income, and you make monetary transfers as easy as sending an email. Some people might think that that's scary. And maybe it is scary. But I'm sure some people also thought that it was scary that you sent email. If I stood here 20 years ago or 25 years ago and said, now you don't have to send letters anymore. You can just press on a keyboard on a computer and you can communicate with people in Thailand or in China or in the Soviet Union. People might have thought, wow, then that sounds very scary. Then you can send military secrets to our enemy, or we need to be able to control the flow of communication. Some people might have thought that 25 years ago, right? If I talked about the email. And some people might think that about Bitcoin when I talk about Bitcoin. It sounds scary that no one is able to control where the money is sent. But I think that obviously it has some drawbacks. That's true. But I think that the positive outcome, the benefit of these opportunities far surpass the drawbacks. Just like, there might be some bad things that with the fact that people can communicate effortlessly over the internet. But I think the benefit is far outweighs the drawbacks. But of course, that's up for political discussion. But no matter what your opinions are, it's probably hard to stop the technology, right? If you ask someone 20 years ago, oh, please stop the internet, please shut down the internet. No one has the power to do that. And if no one can shut down the internet, no one, I think, can shut down Bitcoin. So you need to shut down the internet to shut down Bitcoin. Now, where does the euro beat Bitcoin? Obviously, acceptability or the network size. I'm sure you all get your salary in euros. No one gets their salaries in Bitcoin. You can go down to a shop and pay with euros. So euro is much more widely adopted than Bitcoin is. But I think Bitcoin is a superior technology, so that might change. What I argue is that it might change in the future, and I think it will. Is there any questions about this? Any thoughts about this? No? No? Yes?
Actually, could you describe what you mean by saying that Bitcoin maybe has internal value?
Yes. Okay. So when I gave this presentation originally, I also had included gold here because it was to another form, and that's why it looks a bit weird. It didn't look like that on my computer. So gold has been used as money previously, right? And gold has some industrial use, and it's also used for jewelry. And that means that you can use gold to pay for stuff, but you can also use gold for other things, like jewelry or some electronics. So gold has an alternative usage to being used as money. A euro, it doesn't really have an alternative use to being used as money, except if you get a lot of papers, a lot of notes, and you start heating with them. That sounds expensive. So the euro, I'm saying, does not have an internal value, does not have an alternative use to being used as money. But Bitcoin, you can use the Bitcoin network to store information that cannot be changed. So if you want to prove that you had some kind of information, for instance, for a patent or for an idea to the rest of the world, then you can put that idea, you can encode that idea somehow into the Bitcoin network. And you can thus prove that you had the idea, you had this information at a certain time. And that is the alternative usage of Bitcoin. It requires that you know how the Bitcoin works for that, for you to know how to do that. Yes, but there's also, so if from a purely technical standpoint, you know, I think you could argue that Bitcoin is a superior technology to the way that we interact with the euro system today. You could argue that because of how easy it is to send Bitcoins across borders, for instance. But Bitcoin can also, you know, if we start imagining a future where Bitcoin has, or some kind of technology that resembles Bitcoin has taken over the monetary system. So we use internet money instead of using euros. Then I think we would see some big changes in society. And what do I mean by that? This graph I found here, I was actually surprised by seeing this. It shows how much of the total economy of the state that the government controls. So the government taxes you in different ways. It has an income tax, it has a VAT, corporate tax, capital gains tax, different kinds of taxes, right? So actually I was surprised to see that Finland was number one in the world. Your government controls 58.1% of the total, at least according to these numbers. I thought Denmark was number one, apparently not. And the reason that the government can do this, and the reason that government is able to tax as much as it is today, is because the government controls or has it tells the banks to report how much you earn, right? So when you get a salary, it's put into your bank account. And if you try somehow to hide that from the government, you lie to the government about how much you earn, it's very easy for the government to find out how much money you make, right? They can just call the bank and see, we need his numbers. And the bank has to comply. You think the government can count how many emails you receive each year? Do you think that it's possible for you to hide how many emails you send or receive each year? I see some people nodding. That could be manageable. You can make as many emails accounts as you want, so you can just start sending mails. You can go to the library and send a mail from there. So the government would have a very hard time tracking how many emails you received and sent out. It's the same with Bitcoin. It would have a very hard time, and by that I think it would be impossible for the government to see how many Bitcoin you received and sent out. You might also think that this sounds scary, but if we just try to look analytically at this and see, okay, what would be the impact on society? I was unable to find these numbers for Finland, unfortunately, but I found them from the United States. I think the history for all the Western countries, all the OECD countries, is pretty similar. So this is the same number as I showed you before. It shows how big a part of the economy that the US government controls, the federal government. So if you go back here, and I should have taken 30 more years back, but if you go back to before World War II, before the Great Depression, the government was very small. The government was very, very small. It controlled maybe between, I would say, on average, between 2 and 5% of the total economy of the country. And that change you see obviously this is World War II. The U.S. federal government controls a large percent of the economy in order to pay for the war effort. But what you should also note is that it rises during World War II, but it never really drops back to the same level. So they still keep some of a control of a larger part of the economy than before. These numbers here, they look very low, right? So it's only 20%, but this is only the US federal government. In the United States, they also have states and municipalities and counties that also tax. So if you put all these numbers together, it would be higher in the US. I think it would be around 35%. So the 20th century, in my opinion, this is a large part of the history of the 20th century. The government used to tax between 0 and 5% of the economy. Now it taxes, well, as you saw in Finland, almost 60%. And I think that is because of the government's control of banks, because it knows how much money you earn. And that's the only way that it can tax as much as it does. So what would the world look like if we had a Bitcoin future? Well, I think politically, now of course a lot of things have happened since the start of the 20th century, right? We've had a lot of technological development that has made us richer and our lives more comfortable. But I think in terms of politics, maybe, I'm speculating here, but as my analysis is that we would return to something that a political situation that would be more similar to what we had in the beginning of the 20th century. Much, much, much smaller government than we have today. Like between 0 and 5%. But we'll see. So when is all this happening? When is the cryptocurrency revolution gonna take over the world? When will all these horrible or great things, depending on your viewpoint, when will it happen? I have no idea. I do not know when it's going to happen. I don't know if it will happen in 5 years or it will happen in 30 years. I have no idea. And maybe I have exaggerated some things. Maybe the government will still be able to tax a lot. Maybe it will still only be able to tax 20%, but that's still much more than 5%. But this here is the Bitcoin price. The last, let me think, 2 years. And the Bitcoin price, it measures in a way how big the Bitcoin economy is. So if the Bitcoin price rises, it's a signal, I would say, to that the Bitcoin economy is also rising. So the Bitcoin economy right now is only about the size of the Icelandic economy, maybe even a bit smaller than that. So it's a very small economy. But this is how it has gone the last 2 years. It has risen, but if we look at a longer time period, this here is back in 2009 when Bitcoin was invented. It had no market value because no one was using it. And then it has risen in these kind of bubbles, right? You see a bubble here and then a huge crash. And you see the same pattern rising. A bubble, huge crash. But each crash, it crashes back to a higher level. So here it crashed back to $50, I think. And there's also a bubble here, but it's too small to see. Here it crashed back to $2, $50, $150, and perhaps we are headed towards a new bubble now. Perhaps. No guarantees. And don't blame me if you lose all your money if you invest in Bitcoin, because that's your own responsibility. Finland is a country with a lot of great technological innovators, especially within IT. You have Linus Torvalds, which is one of the smartest people in IT the last 30 years. And also in Bitcoin, you have some fairly large names. This guy here is called Martti Malmi. He was the number 2 developer on the Bitcoin system. So the guy that invented Bitcoin goes under the name Satoshi Nakamoto, but the second guy that kind of made the Bitcoin program better was a Finnish guy called Martti Malmi. This is Jeremias Kangas. He has created a company called Local Bitcoin, which makes it easier for people around the world to trade Bitcoin with each other. So people can start selling Bitcoins and attract customers through his website. So I think he's also made a ton of money on that. Has a very successful Bitcoin business run here from Finland. This is Risto Pietilä. He comes from a background where he has traded in silver, and he has for some time been one of the experts in Bitcoin. He's a very interesting guy. And you also have a smaller Finnish company called Bitcoin, where you can buy and sell Bitcoins. So Finland is with as many different things in IT. They are also doing some very interesting things in the Bitcoin universe. So Finland is one of the bigger. I would say Finland is the most important Bitcoin country in Scandinavia. Great. That was actually the presentation I laid out. I hope that you found it interesting or thought-provoking, or both. I think there should be time for some questions. Yes?
There earlier you had this comparison of the supply of Bitcoin and Euro, and there you have the graph where there was the supply of was it M3, like the widest money aggregates, and there is the changes, and then you said that the supply of Bitcoin is very predictable, but I was thinking that might it have some benefits that the supply of a currency is flexible? Might it prevent such volatility which you then showed in the later graph which you had about Bitcoin?
So if I understand the question correctly, you're asking if you can control the money supply, maybe the value becomes more predictable.
I mean that is the demand of how much demand is there about money? It may change. So if then the money supply can be flexible, might it prevent some volatility of the let's say external?
It's a very good question. The big volatility that I showed you in Bitcoin, I think is partly because Bitcoin is a very small economy. Like if you take the euro, it has it's the biggest economy in the world, right? It's a very big economy, and that is one. I think that's one of the reasons that the value of the euro is so stable. At least in the short run, it's very stable. But in the short run, and the Bitcoin price is like going like this. I think it also has some drawbacks. So you may have a point. I'm a bit unsure, but I think it also has some drawbacks that you can expand and contract the money supply, if you please. If you want to do so, because what we see here from 2004 to 2007 or 2008 is that the money supply is expanding a lot was expanding a lot in the euro, and that was a result of people lending money. So credit was expanding, and when credit is expanding in the euro system, the money supply is also expanding. And that was, in my opinion, what led to the financial crisis of 2008. So this flexible money supply that you say might be a good thing, I think, in my opinion, it was one of the reasons that we had the financial crisis. That you were able to create so much new money, and then you get a very unstable system, because if only one person that has lent money goes bankrupt, then the banks become insolvent because they are so over leveraged. And when one bank becomes insolvent, it defaults on its loans, and then all the banks that owe this bank money also lose money, and so it spreads like a wildfire. So you have in the euro system a very unstable configuration, and of course it doesn't only apply to the euro system; it also applies to the US dollar and the Danish kroner. It's a feature, and it's in my opinion, an unfortunate feature of modern money. And by modern money, I mean money after 1971, because before that you had a better control of the money supply before 1971. Because before 1971, the money was tied to the dollar. It was tied to the gold, to gold. So you could not just create new money out of the thin air before 1971, as you can today. And I think that has some very unfortunate consequences. At least that's my opinion.
How Bitcoin monetary base amount is controlled? What is the logic?
Yes. So the logic is that in order to prevent fraud in the system, you have a lot of computers that are supporting the Bitcoin network. You have a lot of computing power that supports the network. And the way that you incentivize, the way that you make people put their computers to do this work, is that you reward them. And you reward them with newly created Bitcoins. You can also reward them with transaction fees in the system, but the main reward right now is newly created Bitcoins. So in order to get people to support the network, the inventor thought, hey, if I give them money to support the network, then a lot of people will make this network strong. And that is how the newly Bitcoins are created. So how it is controlled, it's controlled by that reward being halved every 4 years. So in the beginning, every 10 minutes, 50 new Bitcoins were made. Then after 4 years, it was only 25 new Bitcoins. And then after 4 more years, it's only 12.5 Bitcoin per 10 minutes. And then after 4 more years, it's 6 points something. And that's why you see this, it's very high in the beginning, the increase of the Bitcoin money supply, but then it drops off and it becomes both predictable and, well, yeah, it is predictable, but also becomes very low when we reach, I don't know, 2020. Does that answer?
Yeah, that's not the answer.
Yeah.
But the logic still, okay, so someone wants to control the amount of it, but is there any logic about it? Just agreement that, okay, it's increased by this speed and that's it?
Yes, it is in agreement. You could try to make your own Bitcoins, but that would then you would create your own monetary system. And you're free to do that, but that would not be fungible with the other Bitcoins. So it would not be the same as the other Bitcoins. So the way it is controlled is through the economic powers of all the other actors. They say if you want to make your own Bitcoin system, you are free to do so, but I think you would have a hard time convincing other people to use your network. I can also take a piece of paper and write 100 Thorkil dollars on this piece of paper, and I can try to sell it to people, but I think it would be hard to get people to pay a lot of money for it. Yes, Antti?
I have a question. I don't know this topic very well, but I have heard that there is also competitors to Bitcoin. One of them was called OneCoin or something like that. I would like to ask, how do you see, as a Bitcoin representative, how do you see the other virtual currencies?
So from a technological standpoint,
Or
these
like how serious competitors they are to Bitcoin and so on.
so the thing that, yeah, like Antti said, once you have invented Bitcoin, once someone has gotten that idea, it's very easy for a good programmer to copy his idea and make his own currency. And that has happened a lot. Bitcoin has a total market value of about 10 billion euros. And the biggest competitor has a market value of 100 million or something like that. So they are quite small compared to Bitcoin. But of course that can change in the future. And that's why I talked about the internet money revolution or the cryptocurrency revolution instead of the Bitcoin revolution. Because I don't know if it will be Bitcoin or it will be something else. That's impossible to tell for me. But there has already been a lot of competitors to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is still number one. So it has already survived a lot. So perhaps Bitcoin will end out on top. We'll see.
Olisiko vielä kysymyksiä? Jos joku haluaa esittää kysymyksen suomeksi, meillä on någon vill ge en fråga på svenska, det är också möjligt. Eli suomeksi voi myös kysyä, voimme kääntää se Thorkilille. Any more questions?
Where can you use Bitcoins in Finland? Or I find it on the internet, or how can I know more about this?
Yes. So there are some. I think it was 3 years ago. I bought a burger in Helsinki for Bitcoin. I think there are some fast food places, some bars, but it's not very. I would say maybe there are 10 or 20 or 30 shops in Helsinki where you can spend Bitcoins. It is probably more popular to use it to pay for internet services. You can buy email providers, you can buy servers, you can buy virtual private networks, you can buy a lot of different internet services with Bitcoin. Yes? Perhaps that was it.
More questions? Okay, I will. Thank you.